Justice League 23.3, aka Dial E, written by China Miéville, art by literally everyone. I'm not kidding. Every single page of this book has a different artist, so there are 21 different artists in this book. Now, for anybody who doesn't know what Dial E is, this is essentially the conclusion, the epilogue chapter to Dial H, which had just wrapped up previous to this, so this isn't going to make any sense if you don't know that we're coming from there. But anyway, we pick up in a town called Littleville, and there's a group of teenagers who apparently are overhearing some guy named Mr. Tibb, I believe, and apparently he's gotten his hands on one of the hero dials, or a dial, I should say, in that he figured out how to make it work by dialing 0833, which notably does not spell hero. And frankly, it's not really sure what it spells. But regardless, these groups of teenagers manage to steal it, and they're like, well, hey, let's go ahead, give it a shot. So they transform, and every single page, we have them transforming into a different thing. They're all villains. They're all bad guys. But we see that every single page, a different member of the group like transforms, or sometimes the same one transforms. And they are basically going around and just causing a bunch of chaos and mayhem to start. Eventually the cops get involved because they transform into like a huge thing that causes some problems. So the cops start chasing after them. And then we also see not only are the cops in on it, but this Tibb guy who originally stole this dial also finds out they have it, and he's also after it. So it's just a thing of like, oh, we're going to get you kids, and then they transform into something that like forces them to attack each other, or forces them to live out their worst fears, or I don't know. There's one that they transform into named Rent, which, as far as I can tell, he's just like hungry, but he doesn't actually do anything. So that battle between the cops and all that go on. They keep on passing the dial across each other. They keep on turning into different villains until finally we get this sequence where they make their way like through a wall. They have a wall that they phase through to get through away from the police. And we see that the centipede from the Dial H shows up, and he's like, hey, that's my dial. You've got my dial. I sensed it, you using it, and I'm here to take my property back. And so he starts fighting against the kids, going up against their villains with his own, and he basically explains, yeah, here's the deal. That was the dial that I had made. At the end of the series, he had his own dial made, and it doesn't dial H for hero. It dials Q for Qued. And apparently Qued is an old like Latin phrase that means evil or bad or something like that. So because Q is not on a normal dial, it goes to 0, and then it's UED 833. So we see these kids trying to go up against him, but of course he's hyper powerful within his own right. And finally there's just one girl left who's kind of good-hearted. The rest of the group is kind of troublemaker. She's a good-hearted one. She's never actually used the dial at this point, but she gets her hands on it. She's trying to defend herself from Centipede, and it just doesn't work. She's unable to dial. And as we learned in the series, if you're too evil, then the hero dial won't work for you. In this case, because she's too good of heart, the evil dial won't work for her. So Centipede comes over, and he's like, yeah, using my powers of being able to disattach myself from time, I can use this dial and become all the villains at once. And we get this whole page layout, a whole bunch of different villains and stuff like that. And he's like, oh, but no matter what, I'm always Centipede and nothing can stop me. And then something stops him, just whacks him on the back of the head. He's knocked out. And we see that it is Roxy from the series. She comes up and she's like, yeah, it's complicated. Don't worry, girl, you're safe. It's me, Rescue Jill. And obviously that was the identity that Nelson took at the beginning of the series. So it all kind of comes full circle there. But that's it. That's all we get out of it. The Centipede, he escaped at the end of the last issue of Dial H, and we were just like, well, let's wrap that up. Let's put a little bow on that. So I'm sure that nothing I said makes any goddamn sense to anyone who wasn't listening to me explain Dial H before. And even if you did, that might have also not made any sense. But it's a very quick read because every page is just the same thing. It's just them transforming into a new thing, and then they go ahead and fight whoever it is they're fighting at that point, be it the cops, the gangsters, Centipede, whatever. Do I think it is a good epilogue for Dial H? Not really. I think that series had a lot of big things going, and this doesn't really feel like a nice little succinct bow on the whole series. It feels like, oh yeah, we left that plot line open. Let's go ahead and just wrap that up real quick. So it's not bad, but it's also not anything I think is necessary for reading Dial H as a whole. You could just essentially skip over it. I would say ratings wise, it is probably, I can't give it like a 7. It's probably a 6.5. And I know that sounds harsh, but it's so unnecessary and so confusing, especially when you throw in different artists on every page, that it's actually pretty hard to read. It's hard to figure out exactly what's going on any given page, because by the time you get your bearings, you flip to the next page and everything's changed again. So yeah, I gotta say a 6.5. I like the idea of a Dial H series continuing here, but this just wasn't it.